He's given us bricks and he's also given us mints. I'm joined now by Jim O'Neill, formerly of Goldman Sachs. Jim, thanks for joining us. Bricks, Brazil, Russia, India, China. The mints, Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria and Turkey. Of those four, those latter four, you're particularly interested in Nigeria, now Africa's largest economy.
Yeah. I just realised a couple of weeks ago when I was down there, I've actually travelled more to Nigeria in the past 12 months than any other country except the US. I don't know whether that means I'm a leading indicator, lagging indicator, coincident indicator, or maybe just trying to get away from United's results. I don't know what it is, but Nigeria is fascinating. It's getting on for 20% of Africa's population. This rebasing we've been waiting about for a long time. Means it's now its largest economy and its potential is huge.
And psychologically, for investors, do they want to be investing in Africa's largest economy?
Of course, because of the size of the population and its youthfulness. If you look at stuff like UN population projections, by 2050 Nigeria could be as big as the US population-wise. So if they got things right and the consumers really get income support, that for a lot of consumer companies, Nigeria is a fantastic story.
But it's not without its problems, well documented.
They've got
very,
one or
serious.
two challenges. Yeah, they've got a huge number of problems, which is why it's so fascinating, of course.
Nigeria has supplanted South Africa as the continent's largest economy. The flip side of that, of course, for South Africa is it's now no longer number one. Yeah. What's the investor psychology around South Africa? Is that starting to wane as well?
Well, I think it's sort of a bit schizophrenic. On the one hand, when people see the kind of story that's unfolding in Nigeria and elsewhere in the sub-Saharan continent, South Africa looks like a real disappointment and very little progress under the current leadership. In fact, they've probably gone backwards. Growth has been really disappointing, and you've got essentially a boom going on in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa around them. So there's the real negative about South Africa. The flip side of it is, of course, their financial markets and their legal system is a lot more, let's call it Western, probably not the right phrase, but for the sake of it, than all these other places. So in some ways, some people see it, if you can get a South African multinational or through South African markets, maybe it's a bit of a conduit to the rest of Sub-Sahara. So that there is some interest in South Africa growing still, from what I can see, as a sort of derivative of getting into the whole Sub-Saharan Africa. But South Africa itself, no, I think the interest is declining.
But having said that though, there's still very, very strong and growing interest in Africa as a continent. Yet these many countries are borrowing at single-digit rates, unbelievably low rates. At what point is this story too good to be true?
So I don't know the answer to that, but I do think we've got the moment, and I say this to a lot of African policymakers I meet, that they should ask themselves, is the past decade all about how good they've been, or is it all about an easy Fed and a booming China? And they don't know the answer to that, but they should sort of interpret the answer as maybe we've not been as smart as we think we've been. And in order for them to continue to do so well, they've got to do better things about some of their problems: governance, leadership, power, communications, infrastructure more broadly, use of technology, and with it, clear, credible policy.
Do you think there's a risk that Africa, as a whole, may borrow too much, be attracted by those low rates and just simply borrow too much? We've spent the last 20, 30 years trying to write off African debt. Are they now at a point where they may be building up again? I
mean, I hope not, because I think this is potentially a fantastic moment. I do think there's a couple of persistent game changers that are in their favour. The whole growth of mobile and internet technology, it's brilliant for African countries, including the most remote villages. It's allowing them to have huge productivity gains in agriculture, developing banking systems based around mobile phones. So these things are potentially transformational, and it gives them a really big chance that this particular African moment won't be wasted like the occasional and lesser focused ones of the past. But of course, the evidence from the past is not great, and that they will waste their moment. But I hope not, for the sake of themselves and the future of all their young people.
You've been to Nigeria more times than anyone else apart from the States in the last 12 months, you've just told us. The next 12 months in Africa, do you think it'll be Nigeria you travel to most, or?
Well,
Where else might it be?
I'm particularly interested in Nigeria because it is nearly 20% of the population, and it is now the largest economy. So if they sort of get it right, they're more of a model for much of the rest of the continent than South Africa is. And with this recent rebasing, a very interesting thing in the Mint context is it's the only one of the Mint countries that's not in the G20. And so now a valid question is now, well, hang on a minute, South Africa's in the G20, why is not Nigeria? And I think you're going to see quite a bit of focus of that. I'm going to be at some meetings with policymakers from the Mint countries in the next few days, and I think this topic will come up. So I'm going to probably spend quite a bit of time on Nigeria still.
Jim, thank you very much.